I think that's the key to being in a county that is politically as much of a hotbed as ours is finding key stakeholders from both sides that will back you and that will help you carry out your message. That was probably one of the key things I've learned. If I could take anything away from this career is that.
Okay, everybody, welcome to the Destination Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Stoker, along with my co-host, Jordan Barker. Jordan, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm so good. Thank you. Excited today to have a special guest with us, a friend of ours. Her name is Natalie Randall, and she is the director of the San Juan County, Utah Tourism Office. And boy, she's made a splash in that county, and we're excited to hear a little bit about that. Natalie, how you doing?
Good. I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for joining us and taking some time. We always like to introduce our guests and talk a little bit about who you are and what you do. But first off, we just want to ask, what is your dream destination? You know, this is a tourism podcast. What would be the best place in the world that you could imagine to go to someday?
Oh, I have two that have been on my list for a long time. But if I have to pick, New Zealand's been at the top of that list. Specifically, I like to bike pack with my husband.
Oh,
so
interesting.
There's a super long single track trail in kind of the Tasman district of New Zealand. So that's been on my list for years.
Oh man, New Zealand's on my list too. I am dying to go someday. I haven't done a lot of, bike packing. And so that's something I'd love to check out. But tell me a little bit more about that. How does one get into bike packing?
Oh, so basically it's mountain biking, but you're just going overnight. So you'll load a lot of your camping gear. So typically it's like your ultralight hiking gear or backpacking gear that you would have, and you just load that onto your bike as well. And so it just allows you to go a little bit further. So instead of maybe a 20-mile day, you can create a 3-day trip and you can get over 100 miles. So just lets you get further and faster.
Yeah, you must have a strong lower back to be able to do that. I don't know if I can pull that off.
Strong lower back, a lot of energy that just needs to be released somehow.
Nice.
That's awesome. Well, tell us, that was obviously your dream destination. Is there a spot that you've been to that you would say, hey, this is my favorite place that I've ever been? Or maybe it might even be a place that you commonly go back to again and again. Anything that comes to mind as far as your favorite place you've ever been?
I love to travel. So for different reasons. So Iceland is a location that I keep going back to. I've been there probably 4 times now, more than I'd like to admit. But there's always something new to discover there, just from the outdoor recreation aspect of it to just the beauty of the extremes. I mean, the volcanic regions. You're on an island and it's just beautiful. So there's a lot to see there. But Southeast Asia is one I also continually go back to because my mom grew up in Malaysia and the food there is amazing. I always joke, I'm like, if I could just go there, that would satisfy my food cravings. Once a year would be awesome, but we go back there every 3 years to visit my family. But
wow. Well, you're pretty well traveled, Natalie. You've been around.
Yeah. I like to travel. I'd love to do more, but work kind of adulting starts to get in the way of that. I have a little kid
that dang
too.
work. Yeah, that's the worst.
Yeah.
Hey, well, we appreciate you coming on. We appreciate you telling a little bit about, not only your dream destinations, but the places you've been. But let's get down to kind of the crux of why I wanted to have you on. We're going to talk a little bit about tourism marketing today. And I want to understand your role at San Juan County Tourism and just a little bit about what led you there.
Yeah, that's kind of a loaded question. I'll try and give you the short version. My way into tourism is a little unique. My background's actually in exercise physiology. You probably don't hear that
naturally.
A lot.
Yeah, we hear that a lot on the podcast. We don't. Yeah.
So naturally, I ended up where I am today. But long story short, I ended up getting into hospital administration after I graduated school and adaptive recreation and program management there. And then what brought me down to San Juan County was actually my husband. He grew up in Monticello. and had started a guiding business down in the region and wanted to return eventually. And so ended up working for Monticello City for a while, doing a mix of economic development, community development, and started to kind of help them a little bit with getting into more of the digital side of marketing. So pulling out of more of the traditional print that they'd been so used to. And then this position opened up, and my position's actually over economic development and tourism in San Juan County.
Okay.
So that's kind of what helped me into this position, was just the background from Monticello City and some of the project management that I'd done with the hospital at the University of Utah as well, and the grant writing and different things like that, that opened up this opportunity with the county. The tourism was a bonus, I think.
And that's a lot of work doing both of those roles, right? I mean, being over economic development and tourism.
Yes, it's pretty challenging. That's probably one of the major challenges I would say in my position, and the struggle because of finding a way to balance the two. The key thing is tourism is a key piece to our economy in San Juan County, but there's also a need to diversify our economy. And I think we get into some of these topics a little bit later, but kind of looking to our neighbor Moab and the fear there of being an overdeveloped tourism destination. So if we focus too much on one specific economic industry, you no longer have the diversity to sustain yourself. So it's interesting.
That's a pretty. I mean, that's a pretty common theme. I feel like whenever we have folks on the podcast, we're this idea of wearing multiple hats, right? Of trying to figure out, all right, I know that I have multiple things that I'm in charge of, that I'm responsible for. How do you think about that? And I know there's probably like no perfect answer or one size fits all for everyone that's out there listening, but I think this is probably a pretty common issue that most people face, especially in your role or your position. How do you think about that? And how do you kind of divide up your brain, so to speak, so that you can stay on top of everything?
I don't know if I stay on top of everything. This week's a great example. I'm running from IPW, which is a travel trade show, which a lot of listeners probably know about. And then I'm bumping over to IEDC conference, which is an international economic development conference. So, I mean, my brain's flipping back and forth constantly. I think one key thing I've found is I no longer multitask as much as I used to. I find that I have to really kind of focus in on a specific project and get it to a good place, and then I can pick up more. So our office has worked a lot to do strategic planning on both the tourism side and the economic development side, which we never really had in the past. And that strategic planning allows us to bring on projects that we feel that we can handle within our office at the time. And I think that's pretty key is, do you have an outline for what your next 5 years looks like, for your next 10 years, aside from just your day-to-day or even year-to-year?
I like it. That makes a lot of sense. I think that's the right approach. I mean, I think even me in my professional career, I've kind of struggled with a lot of that concept of wearing multiple hats. And the more that I've found that I can just sit down and focus and dedicate myself. So even though I know there's 16 other things I should be or could be working on at that very moment, the more time that I can allocate to one specific task, man, you just end up being a lot more productive. So I can certainly appreciate that. Tell me a little bit about San Juan County. For those that are listening, don't know much about San Juan County, can you just give us an overview of the county and what you guys have been up to?
Yeah, San Juan County's we always get questioned on our name because there's the San Juan Islands in Washington. There's a San Juan in Colorado across the border, but we're just located in the southeastern corner of Utah. So I say we're sandwiched between Canyonlands National Park, just south of Moab, and then all the way down to Monument Valley and the Four Corners region. So there's a lot going on. Our western border is Lake Powell. So it's a large county, one of the largest in the United States. I believe it's the size even of some states as well.
Wow.
Like New Jersey could fit in our county.
Jeez.
So it's just a very large landmass. There's a lot of public land opportunity for outdoor recreation, and a key aspect of our area as well is the ancestral Puebloan and the Navajo culture, the Native American culture that's in the region. So it's a big point for why a lot of people come and visit the area. In addition to the key Southwest, the iconic Western movies that you see, and the pioneer heritage as well.
And what are some of the major films that people would recognize that have been filmed down there?
Oh man, I knew you'd ask me this, and I am not a pop culture person. Recent ones, Lone Ranger with Johnny Depp. That's one. Forrest Gump, the Forrest Gump hill that he's running up, that final stretch, that's in our area. All of the westerns that you would think of, all those classics, that was through the entire region.
Interesting. And so, I mean, it sounds like there are so many different things. You talked about, the Native American culture, the movie tourism aspect. You've got national parks that are right there. That's a lot to promote, right? So tell me a little bit about how you think about promoting all of those different types of tourism within a cohesive message.
Yeah. I think what we do is we have to take a step back. The way that it was kind of done in the past and how we've kind of evolved it to now is we kind of have to look at all of the mediums, because you're really dealing with a traditional, part of your visitors are more of a traditional market where they are booking through travel agents, or they're looking for inspiration through magazine articles or through newspaper articles, or through print media mediums, and even through the television mediums as well. But then we also have a millennial age population, I guess you could say, and even many of the baby boomers. I look at some baby boomers that have more tech savviness than I do, and they're on the side of looking at they're looking for inspiration from their Facebook lines or their Instagram lines or all of those different mediums. And so kind of taking a step back and trying to bring it all together. And again, it goes back to the strategic planning, of really kind of more so identifying who our target audience is. But it's hard because we have a wide target range. And so having to narrow that down is always a kind of tricky for us. Like finding who our ideal target market is pretty tricky because it really appeals to anyone.
Totally. And I think we'll go back to that a little bit in just a moment, but I wanted to go back just a little bit to something you touched on earlier, that you kind of stepped into this role in tourism and economic development after graduating in exercise physiology and then being a hospital administrator. That had to have been somewhat overwhelming to step into the role, especially a dual role like the one that you're in. Tell me what steps did you go through to get up to speed on what was going on in tourism, what the history was in tourism, and then also stay on top of the economic development piece?
I think a key thing that helped me in this position was that I worked for Monticello City, which is a city within San Juan County. It's the northernmost incorporated city in our region. We have a lot of unincorporated areas, but it's actually an incorporated city. And just my time that I spent there, about 3.5 years, gave me the time to kind of learn about the area, learn of the lay of the land, meet and develop a lot of the relationships that are so key to me now with other city managers, with other city administrators, mayors, with some of the chapter leaders, and then with other key business stakeholders in the region as well. And so that really helped paint a picture for me of San Juan County as a whole. And then when I stepped into the position, kind of one of the first things that I did just to feel comfortable with the decision and moving forward is a struggle that we had in the area is just the politics of the county, and Bears Ears National Monument was a hot topic at the time. And so to really get the lay of the land and to figure out how we would move forward in a marketing approach, we wanted to get more input from all of our stakeholders. So from those public officials, from the various communities, and from some of the business community and the tourism industry community as well. So we held open forums, and we toured the county and met with a lot of the officials, and we just listened. And that was really eye-opening to us, just to listen and to hear what their pains were, what their struggles were, what they thought was really awesome that had been done in the past, what they thought could be changed in the future. And then we just took all of that, and my team and I compiled all of that into an overall strategy for how we would move forward.
I like it. I think it's so interesting. I mean, I think it would be really tempting for someone that comes in, and I think you see this whenever there's someone that's new to a role. It's really tempting because you want to make an impact. You want to come in and really impress the stakeholders. But I think what you said there is so crucial. You went on a listening tour, right? To be able to listen to the pain points. And even I wanted to double click too on something, as far as the marketing specifically is concerned, obviously, we'll get to some of the ideas and things like that you brought to the table. What had San Juan done in the past as far as marketing is concerned? Is there anything that stood out to you when you first arrived that you said, hey, they did a really nice job with this, whether it be branding, whether it be messaging, whether it be, getting their name out there, anything that came to mind when you first got there, and what was kind of the marketing before you got there, and what did that look like?
Yeah, and that's, I guess that kind of goes into another point I should have made earlier too. One thing that we did was we didn't change anything when I came in. We just kind of continued on some of the things that were already going, just to see how they operated and how they worked, and to kind of get a bit better picture for how we could make future changes. So as we sat through that, and the one thing we weren't able to continue is I had a commission, and what my predecessor did really well was a lot of the international travel trade. So we are fortunate enough with the Utah Office of Tourism, where they offer the partners buy-in to travel internationally, to sell the product, and to train tour operators internationally, to really get your name on the map in both developed markets and developing markets. And so my predecessor had time to do that, and he was well invested in that, had great partnerships. And unfortunately, that was one thing I did have to change immediately, because from the directive of the commission, who I work underneath, they'd requested we not do any more international travel. But really what he was able to do with that was he got Monument Valley on the map. It was known everywhere we go now. We hear about Monument Valley. It already was iconic, but it became an iconic place to visit, not just to see in the movies or to look at. And it became a checklist and a bucket list item, just like the Mighty Five. And so that was able to be accomplished with that face-to-face in the international market. That unfortunately we weren't quite able to continue as much of. We're looking to do more of that into the future, at kind of more of a paced and scaled back version. He also did a lot of traditional mediums, so a lot of print media. That was one thing that we did change quite a bit. That was a little bit of a pain. On our end was there's a lot of long-term developed relationships with advertising in magazines, both international magazines and domestic magazines. And so we pulled quite a bit on those media buys just to try and diversify our overall media message and what mediums we were utilizing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you came in, you got up to speed. You didn't change a whole lot early on because you wanted to, kind of get a baseline to work off of, right? So once you felt like you had a grasp on everything, what were your next steps?
We really felt like we needed to update our brand. And I know that's like a little touchy topic, but brand in general, we wanted it to have more of come out with more of a statement with our brand and with our logo. So the Utah's Canyon Country is what we've been known as, and we didn't want to change that because we wanted to continue the messaging that had already gone through with that. And we pulled on an ad agency to help us, and I think that's so key as well. That was huge for us, is to bring in professionals that could help us through the process. And so changing that initial logo was pretty key and a high priority. And ultimately with that, it was to kind of unify our message. Again, there was a lot of print medium that had been done in the past, but there wasn't a flowing brand or something that pulled all the pieces together. So when you saw Utah's Canyon Country in for Grand Circle, for example, in that publication, and then you maybe saw it in Sunrise Magazine, you wouldn't connect that they were the same destination. They're kind of just the branding, the coloration, the font type, it didn't come together. So that was really our number one thing. The second thing was to roll out a campaign. To my knowledge and working with some of the individuals that had been in my office for longer term than I had, we hadn't ever pulled out a solid campaign with messaging and direction and planned media buys, planned digital placements, and all of those things that I think it's maybe back to marketing 101 potentially, but in the past we kind of just shot at the hip and just went for different things that we felt were good, but didn't have any great way to track the ROI in the end. And so we felt with the campaign that would allow us to do that.
And you mentioned that there was some long-standing traditional media relationships there, and it sounds like you kind of pivoted a little bit and were able to add some digital tactics, a more cohesive campaign. How was that received? Was that hard to sell to the stakeholders that, hey, I know we've got these long-standing relationships, but we want to go a different direction, try something new, maybe something that's a little more measurable? How did that go across?
It was both good and bad. So we had, every time we made a pitch, and that was one of the struggles when we first started, every time our office would make a pitch of how we were making a change, we'd then have to take 5 steps back because there would be pushback, because the previous director had been here for a long time. And so people were comfortable with how marketing was done and the manner in which it was done. And so we really had to sell. But at the same time, one of our issues that we were facing too is that there was, as much as tourism is very prominent in our region, there's a lot of people that don't want tourism because they're trying to preserve the area. They're trying to preserve why they moved and relocated to the region. And with tourism often comes just more people than what you wanted when you first came to an area, and it changes the feel of the area. So facing that pushback as well, it made the tourism industry realize that we did have to have a more cohesive approach to have more measurable outcomes to justify the marketing. Because in the past, we didn't have those measurable outcomes to justify the marketing. So there was good and bad that came from it. There was pushback, but ultimately we were always able to come through where it came down to if we could deliver on ROI. That's what really helps sell our tactics.
That makes sense. I think that I wanted to double click on something that you mentioned. You're talking about, you've referenced the campaign a couple of times,
Yes.
and I want to let's talk about that if we can. Let's talk about the Make It Monumental campaign. Can you give us kind of an overview of where that came from, why that's significant to San Juan, and how people, what kind of the thought process was behind it, and how that should, make people feel, or what you want to try to communicate to people who might not be familiar with the area?
Yeah, so the Make It Monumental campaign was ultimately a goal. One section of it was playing off of the many national monuments that we have in our area. But aside from that as well, just to kind of create this feeling for individuals as they're coming into the region or as they're looking for their next destination that they want to visit. That when you come into San Juan County or Utah's Canyon Country, it really is this monumental experience, adventure, road trip, all of those things that you're trying to kind of check off your bucket list. That's what San Juan County can provide for you. One of the key things I think that helped with that in the overall campaign for us was adding video to it, where we kind of explained to visitors, come and experience San Juan County through all your senses. And we have imagery that still showcases, and you can identify in the imagery that you're in San Juan County, and it's very specific to our area, from the mittens to the natural bridge, but being able to touch, feel, smell, and engaging all of those senses.
I like it. Very cool. I love that. I think it's always kind of a scary thing, and you touched on this a little bit previously, but whenever you roll out a new campaign or a new concept, sometimes it can be really well received and everyone completely catches the vision. All the stakeholders are totally bought in. And other times, it takes a little bit of selling. It takes a little bit of convincing. What was your experience when you rolled out this campaign to the stakeholders? What was their reception of it, and how did they feel about it?
So the stakeholders that got it, that are in tune with marketing, that understood what we were trying to portray, that understood our overall goals and the measurables we were trying to pull out of this campaign, were 100% behind it. So I always have to say we had great support. But we did have the few, and that was probably one of the most challenging things up to this point in my time with San Juan County, was rolling out this campaign, because it caught the attention, which is, I mean, what do they always say? Like, good media, bad media, it's all good, right? Like, regardless of what
Yeah.
people are saying, there's some
In
bad,
most cases.
in most cases. In our case, there's some bad media that came out from it, because we released a press release, and this is me learning too. I mean, this is a learning curve. But it was so close to the Bears Ears National Monument, and
Yeah.
the change in the monument size and the creation of the monument and all of the politics that revolved around that. And so the pushback that we received from it was a lot more than we anticipated. In that as well, though, we had some really great conversations that were, they were pretty raw conversations, but with some of the locals we otherwise would have never conversed with. And so a lot of the things that floated to the top that were negative, we were able to, with those individuals taking time to speak to our office and taking the time to meet with the public and to talk with the public, we were able to get through that, and overall had pretty much unanimous support for the Make It Monumental campaign moving forward. I mean, phase 2 is rolling out for 2020, where we're kind of trying to expand that campaign a little bit more. But overall, full support came back to it. So good and bad came from it.
And I would say kudos to your county, because we actually hear a lot of stories about different experiences with stakeholders, and rightfully so, because you're in a lot of cases, as the marketing arm for the destination, you're kind of the lifeblood of a lot of these businesses, and so they're absolutely right to be concerned and invested and want to know what's happening. And kudos to your county for unifying and making sure that you don't have a divided message, and allowing you to roll out this campaign that's turned out to be pretty great. So it sounds like you've got a great support system within your county, which is awesome.
No, yeah, I appreciate that. And I think that's the key to being in a county that is politically as much of a hotbed as ours is finding key stakeholders from both sides that will back you, and that will help you carry out your message. That was probably one of the key things I've learned. If I could take anything away from this career, is that.
Awesome. Well, I want to shift gears a little bit. I've enjoyed talking about the campaign. Something that I've kind of admired as I've watched you and some of the situations that you've dealt with in your county, you are so close to a destination with a pretty recognizable brand internationally in Moab. And I wanted to have you chat a little bit with us about what that's like, being so close to them, having to compete with them. And then are there benefits that you receive from being so close to them?
Yeah. I think honestly, the hardest thing about, and the biggest challenge of being so close to Moab has nothing to do with the marketing aspect of it. It all has to do with going back to my stakeholders and partnerships I'm developing inside my county to support our marketing efforts moving forward. Being so close to such a large destination like Moab, it's like the Moab complex is what we kind of have termed it. When you ask the stakeholders, what do you want to become? Like, what can we do for you into the future? How can we plan into the future? The number one answer is, we don't want to be another Moab. That's what you can do. And so I think we often get caught up in, and that's one of our frustrations and that we deal with out of our office is, well, what do you want to be? Like, take Moab out of the picture and the sky's the limit. But having Moab right there, so close, and to see the impacts of what has happened in Moab, from the housing crisis to affordability to all of the workforce to all of those struggles that Moab's experiencing, that's the fear that San Juan County residents and businesses have, that we're going to become another Moab. And so it takes you a step back from all of your efforts in trying to promote a destination and grow a destination because of a fear of growing to that side. But ultimately, I think there's a lot of bonuses that come from being so close to a developed destination like Moab, from a marketing standpoint, because one of our number one cities in our website hits and in our overall searches comes from Moab. It's not that it's Moab locals, it's the people that are in Moab that are trying to get out of Moab because they've been coming back all these years and it's just too overrun. So they're looking for the next best thing or what they can do beyond that border.
What do you guys do to capitalize on that?
Yeah, so we have started to work a little bit more with actually the Moab Travel Council in some regards. So there's kind of different levels of how we've worked at it. One, I really believe in regionalism, being in a rural community and kind of removed from the rest of the central hub of the state as our main marketing arm for the entire state. We have to work together. Um, so that's the key area is working together with Elaine, the Moab area travel director, working with her to develop some co-campaigning through itinerary development. So as we're selling the region to come and visit the area, we're developing itineraries that are having people stop in Moab and visit arches and Canyonlands and all of the things that Moab has to offer, and then continuing them through and really creating an overall destination and more of a trip based off of Southeast Utah.
I like it. I like it a lot. That's cool. I mean, it as you talk about some of the challenges in your role. I mean, you've touched on a few of those. What do you view as the biggest challenge in your role today? And maybe that answer changes depending on the day, possibly. But as you take a step back and look at your biggest challenge, what would you say that is right now for you in your role?
I think politics is always the hard challenge, but
Yep.
maybe I shouldn't go into that one. um, but I think it goes back to politics in the sense of just always trying to get the stakeholders involved. That's always the challenge is as in the marketing arm of things, we're always out looking to the consumer, looking to the person that's looking in, and we're doing a really great job at helping them and doing outreach to them and getting them interested in capturing their attention. But so often we forget to capture the attention of our locals that live in the area that are going to
Yeah.
be impacted by what we're doing. So one thing that our marketing agency is helping us with is developing a partner page that I think is going to be huge for our county. In that partner page, we're laying out our Make It Monumental campaign. We're laying out the demographics that we're targeting. Not laying all our cards on the table, but enough that our partners can start to, and our locals can start to understand what our office does and who we really are doing outreach to and the type of people that are going to be coming to visit their area and their home.
That's great. I think that's a really good step, especially with that partner page. To continue to solve that. So I think that's a good move. A question that I have for you, you talked about challenges. Tell me what your biggest success is. I know you've been in, relatively speaking, because people in the tourism industry tend to be lifers, right? So
Yeah.
you've been in a relatively short period of time. But what do you feel like is your biggest success in the time that you've been in your role?
I think it's really been being able to create a cohesive strategy for the county. And that's probably been one of the most rewarding things as well, because in developing the cohesive strategy, uh, we have received stakeholder buy-in. And so it's always, that's always kind of, I mean, to help with my position as far as how do I receive positive reinforcement for my position. That's when I can know that the local stakeholders are on board with our decision. So I think that's a huge thing. It's not flashy or anything, but just having that solid strategy in place for how we will move forward in the next 5-10 years. That was huge. Like that was a big undertaking, and that we were able to accomplish it. That feels like a great success.
Yeah. As you think about the future, like you mentioned that, what's next for San Juan County? Like where are you going, and what does that future look like for you and for San Juan County?
Yeah. That's a hard question. I think we want to further explore the development of regionalism. I
Yeah.
think we're going to start exploring more into partnerships that go across the state borders as well. So kind of teaming up with our neighbors like Durango and Montrose and those communities. and doing some itinerary development over there. We have some things where we rolled out a video with the Utah Office of Tourism called The Voices of Bears Ears. Love to evolve that more and have some ideas for how to further showcase that region and kind of bring a dividing topic and creating more of a unifying message behind that. And I think the county is ready for that. I think they're starting to get to the point where some healing needs to occur. And so I hope with some good messaging, we can help with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you coming in and helping create and build that strategy, I don't know that the county was ready for that 2 years ago. And I think that speaks to the progress that you've made in your time there. I think that's pretty great.
Yeah, no, thanks.
Okay. I think, our listeners, when they listen to this podcast, I think one of the main things that they are looking for is like a takeaway, right? Like if you had to boil advice down for any destination that's trying to market their destination to one thing that you feel like is the most important thing that they need to know that maybe you've learned in your time there, what would that be?
Listen to the destination that you're promoting. So listen to the people that are the business, whether they're the businesses or the tour operators or the hotels or just the residents, but take time to listen to that piece of the puzzle. I think that would be my big takeaway.
Great. So for those of you that are listening, listen, right? Listen to the stakeholders within your destination, listen to the key partners, hotels, restaurants, any other businesses, the visitors. Listening is such a key component to marketing, and I'm glad actually that you focused on that, Natalie. So thank you. It has been wonderful to have you on, Natalie. Thank you for taking the time today. We sure appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, this has been the Destination Marketing Podcast with Adam Stoker and Jordan Barker. I want to remind everyone that we have a LinkedIn group for destination marketers. It's actually called Destination Marketers on LinkedIn. And if you search that out, request to join the group. That's where we share challenges that we're dealing with collectively. We share successes. We also release this podcast and post links to this podcast within the LinkedIn group. Would love to have you join us. It's growing more and more every day. And we look forward to seeing you there. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.